Greetings, my friends. I want to thank you all for subscribing. I want to thank all of my channel members for supporting me in this endeavor to save pop culture. And if you are not subscribed, please consider supporting this channel. We need you. Thank you. For about the last year and a half, I've been talking to you about the Lucasfilm Civil War, the split between the Kathleen Kennedy camp that views Star Wars as a platform, and the Lucas loyalists led by Jon Favreau, who view Star Wars as a story, and an important one. While there are those who have tried to dispute the existence of a civil war at Lucasfilm, claiming that everyone was lockstep with Kathleen Kennedy, I have steadfastly maintained that the Civil War at Lucasfilm was indeed all too real, and a recent article in The Atlantic entitled "How Disney Mismanaged the Star Wars Universe" has confirmed two things. The Lucasfilm Civil War was real, and it appears that Jon Favreau has won that war. And regarding the end of Kennedy's tenure and the existence of the Lucasfilm Civil War, it appears once again that #Doomcock was right. A bold statement, you say? Truly it is. And yet for evidence, I would like to examine this article in The Atlantic and see if we can't extract some subtext to support this thesis. Mainstream publications like The Atlantic generally do not antagonize huge corporations like Disney. The Atlantic is not a fan-based magazine. It is rather a highbrow publication of general culture and politics, and pop culture generally isn't foremost on their radar. So for a magazine like The Atlantic to come up with this kind of article now, on the eve of Kennedy's contract expiring without renewal, suggests that the impetus for this article was none other than Disney itself, and the purpose of the article? To gently throw Kennedy under the proverbial bus and indicate as respectfully as possible, without ever naming her, that the Disney sequel trilogy was a failure that will be disavowed and hopefully decanonized in the future. This article was an initial step in redefining what Star Wars is, a first stage of what will surely be a coordinated effort to separate Star Wars moving forward from Star Wars under the Kennedy regime, and a signal to fans that the vision for Star Wars moving forward will be Jon Favreau's vision, supported by Lucas loyalist Dave Filoni and aided by none other than George Lucas himself, who has allegedly taken meetings with Iger, Chapek, Favreau, and Filoni about a new trilogy he may produce. As evidence, let's examine and dissect a couple of paragraphs from this article. Quote, "Right now, Star Wars is at a turning point. Lucas's original vision famously inspired an era of big-budget blockbuster movies whose creators, just as famously, eventually ran out of new ideas and came to rely on sequels and spin-offs. Inevitably, Star Wars itself succumbed to that fate after releasing a divisive trio of prequels around the turn of the millennium. In 2012, Lucas sold his franchise to Disney, Hollywood's chief recycler of old stories." Boy, you can say that again. Fresh Star Wars films began to roll out in 2015. Well, they weren't really all that fresh, were they? I mean, they were pretty much the definition of a recycled product put through a wood chipper. But never mind. To continue with the article. Though early acclaim and profits were impressive, creative troubles began to hurt the bottom line. In 2019, dismayed reviews and relatively soft ticket sales greeted The Rise of Skywalker, the finale of a trilogy set 30 years after the action of the first films. Around that time, Disney CEO Bob Iger announced a movie-making hiatus for Star Wars. Oh, that he did. He hiatused the hell out of Star Wars after Solo lost money and with the declining box office of the Disney sequel trilogy. Old Bob went ahead and canceled a bunch of movies and just turned them into TV shows, but never mind. Let's go on with the article. Quote, "Had Lucas's galaxy lost its power, or had its new stewards simply mismanaged it? The recent success of a remarkable Star Wars television series suggests the latter. When the streaming TV service Disney Plus launched in late 2019, It featured The Mandalorian, which picks up 5 years after the events of the original trilogy and follows the adventures of a mysterious mercenary who has sworn never to take off his helmet. By the end of Season 2, a critical consensus had emerged. It was the best live-action Star Wars product to arrive since the early 1980s. Millions of viewers cooed over the short-statured enigma known to fans as Baby Yoda, who has a price on his adorable head for unknown reasons. As the Mandalorian's laconic and lethal hero travels from one planet to the next, the sublime feeling of immersion that laced Lucas's early movies re-emerges. To watch the show and then look back at the sweep of Star Wars history is to understand where that feeling comes from and why most of Hollywood's hero-driven, special effects-laden fantasies never attain it." Unquote. And so these two paragraphs are stating what the fans have been saying all along. Disney's so-called stewards of the Star Wars brand, namely Kennedy and the Lucasfilm Story Group, although this article is too politically savvy to call her out by name, these stewards have mismanaged Star Wars. The article is making it very clear that while the prequels were disappointing to many, they hadn't done anything like the damage that the Disney sequel trilogy had done to Star Wars. It also speaks glowingly of Favreau's The Mandalorian, calling it, quote, "the best live-action Star Wars product to arrive since the early 1980s, unquote. Remember when I said in one of my recent videos that Kennedy would not be frog-marched out of her office and escorted off the premises of Lucasfilm, that she would be quietly shifted out of her position when her contract expired, allowed to continue on to Indy 5, or possibly be shunted to another position inside Disney where she couldn't do any more harm to Star Wars? My friends, this is what that kind of gentle change looks like. A quiet transition away from Kennedy, placing blame squarely in her camp without naming her specifically. This is what the end of an era looks like in corporate America. Rest assured, Disney had some kind of hand in getting this article out there, and the things it's saying are the things that the mouse wants fans to know. Note that the article continues, quote, "The Disney sequels are too frantically paced and too packed with winks to old Star Wars films for viewers to settle in with the new sets, creatures, and costumes. Both of those later trilogies told strenuously mythic stories. The prequels followed the tragic transformation of a hero into a villain, and the Disney movies amounted to another chosen one tale." Ha, Ray. Chosen to destroy the universe, more likely, but never mind. The flaws of their scripts have been rightly scrutinized, but fixing those flaws would not solve the more fundamental failures of execution. The world of The Mandalorian, thankfully, is sturdy like well-worn concrete. The hero flies a rickety spaceship modeled on a 70s warplane. Baby Yoda's twitching puppet ears convey the expressive range of actual toddlers. Most important, the showrunner, Jon Favreau, has absorbed the take-your-time, exploratory ethos of Lucas's first trilogy. The wanderings of The Mandalorian do have a mythic quality. The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda are an odd couple, protector and charge, father and son, man and beast. There is also a running plot involving a black-armored arch-villain that fulfills the demands of modern blockbusters to set up future spin-offs. 10 other Star Wars TV shows were announced in December. When the second season culminated in a CGI-assisted cameo from the original trilogy cast, some critics fretted that the show was about to devolve into Hollywood hackery. But thus far, archetypal storytelling and serialized intrigue, ingredients often misused in franchise-driven entertainment, have mainly just anchored Favreau's careful creative riffing. If the miracle of The Mandalorian continues, viewers of future seasons will only rarely notice an over-determined hand of fate guiding the action. They'll instead continue to be caught up in individual moments." Unquote. This article, I believe, reflects the current official viewpoint of the Walt Disney Company in regard to Star Wars. Kennedy's Star Wars is dead. Long live Jon Favreau's Star Wars. This is a polite and face-saving final salvo in the Lucasfilm Civil War as the old regime faces the proverbial firing squad and the new regime is hailed as a conquering hero. Note The rhetoric here in this article, Favreau's careful creative riffing, the miracle of the Mandalorian. This is why I say that Jon Favreau has won the Civil War, and while there will certainly continue to be skirmishes along the edges of this war, it's pretty clear at this point that Kennedy is done with Star Wars and Disney management is backing fan favorites Favreau and Filoni. This is excellent news for fans like me, who believe that Star Wars has so permeated our culture as to be elevated to the level of modern myth. This Civil War has been a source of pain as we've watched our favorite characters get degraded for political reasons, ranging from intersectional feminism to attacking the so-called patriarchy. But the Civil War has also been a source of hope, a hope that Star Wars could be saved from the degradation and despair of the Disney sequel trilogy. How optimistic you were regarding the prospects of victory in that war determined where you were as a fan, with many losing hope and walking away forever. I have stayed more out of stubbornness than hope because I refuse to simply yield ground to these cultural vandals. If we just walk away from these properties once they're sufficiently vandalized, we're certain to lose everything eventually. I believe we have to take a stand. We have to fight for what we love, keep reviewing things, keep calling out the shoddy scripts and woke garbage, starve these corporations of profits until they remember that as their customers, we are always right. Accordingly, it has been my contention through all of this that if we're actually fighting to save pop culture, we've got to have some victory conditions clearly in mind. For me, if Star Wars was going to be saved, there were at the very least 3 conditions that had to be met before we could even talk about going back as fans. The first was the ending of Kathleen Kennedy's control over Star Wars. The second was the erasure of the Disney sequel trilogy from the timeline and from canon. The third was that Disney had to make things right with Gina, hopefully offering her a new contract and bringing her back into the company, not only for her sake, but for the sake of her fans and Jon Favreau's plans for Rangers of the New Republic, which was slated to be Gina's show. Her departure has forced Jon to shelve Rangers and alter his plans across the board for all of his shows. Though my sources reported that Gina was in talks with Disney and furthermore reported that she was recently sighted on the set of a Star Wars production while filming, it would appear from the lack of further word that those talks have ended for whatever reason. Whether or not those talks are over for good may well determine the future of Star Wars moving forward, but that said, what of the other victory conditions? Clearly, with an article like this, Kennedy is moving on from Star Wars in one form or another. Favreau's vision for Star Wars will prevail moving forward. It will be many years before we see if they will take the necessary step of erasing the sequel trilogy, as the current plan is to spread this event out over the course of multiple series, including Ahsoka specifically. All in all, barring some kind of crazy last-minute coup and the occasional border skirmish with legacy shows like The Acolyte and all-female Star Wars shit show, changes are coming to Star Wars. Will they be enough to pull it back from the edge of the abyss? That, my friends, only time will tell. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry.
Ha 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 ha.